Hey, so my name's Gregory Brennan. I'm a program coordinator here with Virginia Clean Cities, and we have the pleasure of having Whitney Kopanko from Sonny Merryman on the call. With nearly a decade at Sonny Merryman, Whitney Kopanko serves as a director of marketing and school bus sales, overseeing a dedicated team supporting Virginia's school bus customers. She leads the company of electric school bus program, managing grant funding, fostering new partnerships, and guiding operations and deployment strategies. In most recent years, Whitney has facilitated the procurement, and deployment of electric buses for over 40 Virginia school divisions, landing Virginia within the top 5 states for the electric school bus deployment nationwide. So with that, I will pass it over to Whitney.
Thank you very much, Greg. It is a pleasure to get to be with you guys this afternoon. I see some names on here that I recognize, so I'm glad to have some familiar faces as well as some new ones also. One familiar face I'll give a shout out to is Mike Wirt. He is actually one of our Sonny Merriman team members as well that has worked with many of these school districts on their electrification as well. So I'm sure when we get to the Q&A, I might have him interject some too. He's got a lot of direct customer experience as well that he can share with you guys. So with that, I will get right into it. Again, Whitney Kopanko, I am the Director of Marketing and School Bus Sales at Sonny Merriman. And today I would like to talk with you guys a little bit about what we term the key benefits and considerations for school districts that are thinking about school bus electrification and adoption. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Sonny Merriman, the company that Mike and I work for, and a little bit about our experience. So Sonny Merriman, we have been in business now for 57 years and proudly called ourselves partners of many of the 132 school districts in Virginia for about 57 years now. We're talking today mostly about school buses, especially electric school buses, but we actually are a commercial bus and vehicle company as well. So we work with a lot of like public transit providers, as well as, perhaps childcares and churches and anybody really that has a need to move someone on a bus or some type of van, anything of that nature. So but on the school bus side, we actually represent Thomas Built Buses. They are the OEM located in High Point, North Carolina, so not too far away from us actually. And with them, we are a platinum support and an EV ready certified dealer. So Thomas has about 45 dealers that represent the United States as well as Canada. And a handful of those dealers have the special certification of being platinum support as well as EV ready, which essentially means we have checked all the boxes and put forth the effort to really be able to offer our customers a complete package of support for their entire fleet, but especially their electric school buses as well. We do have 4 locations across the state, again, very intentional so that we can have boots on the ground to support our customers with their fleets. The location I'm coming to you from is actually in Lynchburg, Virginia. That is our headquarters, and the picture you see there on the top. We also have a location in Ashland, Virginia that serves kind of our greater Richmond area. We have a facility in Chesapeake for our Hampton Roads folks. And then we have a facility in Bristow or right outside of Manassas that serves Northern Virginia. And our goal with that is really just to be about an hour, give or take, maybe even less than that, away from each of our customers. So again, they have that local convenient support from our team members. And again, as I mentioned to you, we're here mostly today to talk about our experience with electric school buses. So I figure it would be appropriate for me to introduce the star of the show, really, which is our Julie electric school bus. That is Thomas's Type C electric school bus. Just some kind of highlights of the bus so you can kind of get an idea as to how it would interact with operations in Virginia. The Julie electric school bus can go, give or take, somewhere in the neighborhood of 148, 150 miles on a single charge. That is through the use of a 246 kilowatt hour battery pack, which was recently increased in size. So a lot of the buses that we're going to talk about that have been delivered into the state actually had a 226 kilowatt hour battery pack. So we just recently added about 20 kilowatt hours of additional size, not really increasing the size of the batteries, but rather just the energy density of the individual cells. In charge time, that's usually something that interests a lot of people. On a DC fast charger, about a 60 kilowatt charger, again, which is the charger that most of our school districts operate, about 60% of them. It takes 2 to 3 hours to charge. If you're charging it from that thing is dead as a doornail kind of thing, and you have to charge it all the way up, it's going to take closer to 3 hours. If you're using a slower charger, say, a 25 kilowatt DC charger, it's going to take closer to about 8 hours. Again, most of our school districts operate the 60 kilowatt DC fast chargers, but about 40% of them do have some of the slower chargers as well. Julie is a DC fast charger enabled bus. AC charging is coming for Julie, but right now all of our deployments have been with DC fast charging. So yeah, to date, I first, like Greg said, I've been with Sonny Merryman now for going on 9 years or so. And in the last 4, I have gotten the pleasure of interacting with a lot of electric school buses. So our company first got into the electric school bus market actually back in 2019. Many of you, again, very familiar names, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this program, but back in 2019, the utility Dominion Energy actually announced they were going to be doing an electric school bus program where they would support school divisions to offset some of the cost of charging and the bus itself. We did compete in that competitive RFP, and we were fortunate to be awarded the entire contract to deliver the first 50 electric school buses in Virginia. So we actually delivered our very first Julie electric school bus into the state in November of 2020 to the lucky neighboring locality just next door to our headquarters here in Pittsylvania County. Since then, we have now delivered more than 220 Julie electric school buses to about 40 different school districts across the state. There's a couple handful more that will be soon added to this map through some of the more recent funding programs, so we're very excited for them. And during that 4 years that we have deployed these buses, they have now reached more than 2 million miles in operation. That's especially exciting for me. I'll just kind of to highlight this because when we first were participating on the Dominion Energy RFP to participate in that, I actually remember looking at a lot of the technology that was going to be used in Julie. We kept pointing to this technology has now been used for 9 million miles. So it's exciting to me to now be able to say that that technology that actually came from a transit bus has now accumulated, somewhere around 20-25% of that original mileage that we pointed to before. So it's very exciting for us. We have been very proud and excited to participate on this leading charge, if you will, in Virginia. Virginia has been within the top 5 states to adopt electric school buses. So Virginia was an early adopter and definitely got ahead of the curve. And what I have learned, what Mike has learned, what all of our team members have learned through all of these electric school bus adoptions is that it takes a lot of planning, it takes being very thoughtful, and it takes good partners to be able to adopt this technology successfully. So that's really what I hope to share with you guys today, basically just to kind of tell you, again, I don't like to call them the negatives, but they're key considerations that you should give thought to make sure it's going to work for your fleet and going to be the right fit, as well as many of the benefits of why we do have so many school districts that are interested in this. And really my hope for you at the end of this is just to provide some insight and some transparency in saying electric school buses are great, but we do have to be very thoughtful and well prepared when we work with a school district to adopt them. So first, again, maybe just finishing up on our experience and kind of the insights that we're going to provide with you. What our company has always tried to do, again, with this approach in electric school buses is we really do work with school districts from the very start of the process. So that is funding and ordering. I have worked with this Virginia Clean Cities team several times, as well as individual school districts to work on grant applications and rebate applications. We work with school districts to find funding and then secure that funding. We work with them on infrastructure build out. So actually working with them on project planning, site walks, figuring out what's going to be the right charger for them. Of course, the bus delivery, which is honestly the easy part. Stakeholder engagement, so interacting with their community members, administration, anyone and everyone. Training, which we will talk a lot about, another key component that we have worked with school districts on, that is for drivers, technicians, first responders, really anybody on their team that will be interacting with their electric school buses. And then we really focus on helping them with deployment and operations and tracking and servicing. So we, through this process with these 40 school districts, we don't just deliver the bus and drop it off and say, plug it in and go. We really stick with them through the process of truly integrating these buses into their fleet and having it be a successful adoption with them. So that's kind of the perspective for us and our experience and kind of where some of these considerations come from. So we'll start with the easy things first. Many of these benefits of electric school buses, I'm sure, will not be surprising to many of you on this call. One that we talk about a lot is sustainability and air quality. Interesting fact for you, if anyone is familiar with the A-Fleet tool, which is through the Department of Energy and the National Argonne Laboratory, I believe it is. If you look at their tool and you say, if I replace a new diesel bus, if I opt to buy an electric bus instead of a diesel new bus, how much greenhouse gases would you save? That tool would put something out in the neighborhood of 13 to 16 tons, depending on how efficient your diesel or your electric vehicle is. That doesn't mean a whole lot when you just say 13, 14, 15, 16 short tons. But if we look at that in terms of volume, that is enough greenhouse gases to fill 500,000 birthday balloons each year. That by operating an electric bus, you can remove those greenhouse gases from our environment. So that's one that we all know and is a well-known fact about electric school buses. Quiet operations, another big one that we hear from drivers in particular. So of course it's nice for the neighborhood, I suppose, to keep the noise down, but really it's about the drivers and the students on board. I'm sure Mike could attest to this, that we've had many transportation directors tell us that their electric school buses, typically kids are more well behaved on the electric school buses. Reason for that is because they're not having to talk over one another and over the hum of the engine. So in typical, like if you get on a school bus that is electric and it's got a bus full of kids on it, the noise level is going to be reduced just because, again, they're not having to yell over the noise of the engine. That makes for a better environment for drivers. We all know that there is a national shortage of school bus drivers, and many of the reasons that school bus drivers have left is a lot of times due to they're tired of the putting up with maybe the kids that aren't behaving so great or even the parents. So anything we can do to promote better behavior on the buses in turn is a helpful thing to the driver as well, and of course operations. Cost savings, another one. Of course, a lot of times people think electric school bus more costly. That is true for the upfront cost that, it is going to come with a higher price tag, but we do see some operational cost savings that comes from an electric school bus. Take, for instance, a 40-mile route. That's a pretty average route in Virginia. That route with an electric school bus in Virginia, so using the standard energy rate of about 12 cents per kilowatt, that 40-mile route would cost you about $9 on an electric school bus compared to something like $20 if you were operating a diesel bus. A few dollars on a route here or there certainly maybe doesn't seem like much, but when you take those and you really add it up over a year's time, that can end up being some significant savings for school districts in their fleets. Along that line also, we have maintenance cost savings. So a lot of these headaches that a lot of, technicians that have worked on diesel buses before with DEF fluid and spark plugs and belts and oil changes, those things are now removed from electric school buses. That is not to say there is no maintenance on electric school buses. And I have here just a few of the high level kind of maintenance that do come with an electric school bus. Of course, on our electric school bus, there is some fluid changes that are required for the transmission as well as the power steering pump. There is some filter and fluid changes that have to happen with the air compressor. Again, very nominal cost, and ends up being about a 50% cost savings for our school districts. The next one that I think is often overlooked on electric school buses, but I tell you really provides perspective too into the big picture of how electric school buses make a difference. But that first one is educational opportunity. So with the adoption of electric school buses, we are now giving our transportation departments the opportunity to get more engaged with the teaching side of kids and not just the transporting them. Very important role. You got to get the kid to school before you can educate them, but it's still fun for some of our transportation departments to now be able to present this new technology to students to hopefully inspire the next generation of careers and workers that we will need to be able to really adopt and grow this technology and even future technologies down the road. So several of our adoptions, what we have done, even tapping into the next piece, which is community engagement, is we really try to bring stakeholders together and focus on some of these learning opportunities. You know, how does regenerative braking work on a bus? Or how does this charger work? What's the difference between AC and DC charging? And now all of a sudden we're having the opportunity to bring some of our STEM kids and get them involved, or some of, you know, even our trade school kids that, you know, are doing VOTEC and these kinds of things, to bring them in and let them experience this new technology as well. Next one, operational fit, as well as just the technology. Um, Honestly, when we look at electric school buses, electrification makes a lot of sense for school buses. There's still some things to be worked out, perhaps in other applications for electric, but when we look at the operation of a school bus operates within a very confined territory. We know where that school bus is going to operate every day. We know the routes it's going to operate on. Occasionally, it might go on a field trip. But those short confined routes, as well as the downtime during the day, provide a perfect fit for electrification. We can take a school bus out on a route in the morning, even a longer route. Again, like I mentioned earlier, a 40-mile route is pretty typical in Virginia. But again, because of some of the school bus driver shortages, we do have some districts that just their morning route in itself might be 90 miles or more because they're having to do multiple routes. Even still, for those that have the longer routes, and if you remember, I say Julie has about 150 optimal operating range, they still have time to take their bus out in the morning, drive, come back in the afternoon, do a quick little top off charge, and then go back out in the afternoon. What we have seen with most school districts in Virginia, there are some larger ones. I mentioned that the first electric school bus we delivered in the state was actually to Pennsylvania County. Pennsylvania County is the largest, I believe it is, landmass school district in our state. Nonetheless, they were the first one to get an electric school bus. A lot of their routes are not yet conducive to electric school buses, but can they operate them? Absolutely. It takes a little bit of finesse to be able to do that and planning the right routes, but they can. When we look at a lot of other school districts, though, we can point to many other school districts and say at least 50% of routes, probably more, in Virginia can be done with an electric school bus and the proper planning. Another one that is a benefit to electric school buses is there is some resale market potential. Some of this is still very new, and figuring out exactly what is the resale value or what is the second life value of some of the components, mostly the batteries in an electric school bus. But we do see that there is some opportunity here. We also know from manufacturers that there's opportunity for recertification programs and that type of thing. I mentioned before about our first interaction with electric school buses came through the Dominion Energy program. Through that program, one of the key fundamental parts of their program is a second life battery application. So in these electric vehicle market, there is a lot of talk about what happens to these batteries when they can no longer support their transportation usage. What do we do with them? And one of the answers to that, at least in the interim, is a second life application, which, say for Dominion's program, is taking those batteries out of the buses and being able to deploy them in renewable energy applications such as solar arrays or things of that nature, that these batteries, while they might not have enough capacity to perhaps go a 90-mile school bus route, they still have plenty of capacity to be able to support some energy storage in a solar array. And so again, we can really use the batteries before we say, okay, now we got to figure out what to do. One of the next things I'll say is that there are a lot of opportunities for some financial partnerships and utility partnerships with electric school buses. So we have seen in the last couple of years that there is a focus. I'm sure if anybody has turned on the news, or not even the news, but just any channel on TV or social media or whatever it might be, that we know that there's a focus from government officials to pursue electrification. And with that, there is a lot of funding programs that can support school districts that want to make that transition. A couple of the key programs that I'll highlight, I know we have a couple of school districts on here that we watch very closely, are one, the EPA Clean School Bus Program. So this is a program that has $5 billion allocated to it over about a 5-year program. Comes from the IIJA, and through that program, $1 billion is spent every year through the use of rebates and grants. This is one that we often see in the news, and a lot of our school bus adoption here in Virginia is now coming from that program. We've gotten several awards through that. Another one that we watch closely actually comes from the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program. We just are in our first phase of that one right now, and that program is actually going to be closing later this month. That one really focuses on larger deployments of 10 buses or more. But that is another grant program that is available to districts. Another one that is new, especially for electrification. So there's been funding programs many times in the past for different alt-fuel vehicles, but this is something new that we have seen specifically for electric vehicles, and that is tax credits. In terms of, we will have school districts that previously have not been eligible to get tax credits. They're a tax exempt entity. But what we have seen with the recent programs is now school districts can actually apply for this tax credit, which is the 45W commercial clean vehicle tax credit, and they can get about $40,000 back on their school buses that are electric. That in particular is a really close one that we're also now watching with school districts applying for that one, because what we see with these programs, initially they were nearly providing a free bus, if not a free bus. We have since in the last rounds or two of these programs seen where now we are looking to achieve basically cost parity with a diesel bus. So rather, a school district is not going to get an electric school bus for completely no cost to them, but rather these funding programs offset the electrification cost so that it makes it pretty much on par, oftentimes cheaper still, than purchasing a diesel bus. And so with these funding programs, such as the EPA Clean School Bus Program or the Clean Heavy Duty Program, many times those programs are not stackable. So what that means is essentially, I can't win a rebate with the Clean School Bus Program and then also win the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program and put those two monies together to get a free bus. That is not allowed. But what we do see is that this commercial clean vehicle tax credit is now stackable with other grant and rebate funding. So some of those out-of-pocket costs that school districts do have, they're able to get some of that reimbursed later. So another really strong benefit to electric school buses is there is a lot of funding available to support school districts with them. Along the same lines of funding support, there are plenty of utility partnerships. These utility partnerships look different case by case. In Virginia, the biggest utility partnership, of course, that we've seen with electric school buses to date is Dominion. And through their program, they have been able to offer school districts pretty much 100% funding support for infrastructure cost. So that's the charger, it's any facility upgrades needed, pretty much to where a school district has to pay nothing out of pocket for the actual charging equipment for their buses. That's a huge cost savings for them. In return for that, there is an exchange of, benefits between the school district as well as Dominion, to where the school district agrees for their bus to be used in a V2G application. They also agree for their battery to be used in a second life application. So it's kind of a trade-off for both, it benefits utility as well as the school district. So we've seen that kind of model where the utility is looking to basically offset the cost of some of the upfront purchase price on their chargers. But we've also heard in other states, not really in Virginia too much yet, but in other states where school districts are partnering with their utilities perhaps on V2G, or at least looking at it to say, can we sell energy back to our utility during the summer months when we're not using our buses? And basically, in that case, a school district will take a school bus, and it works out great for the utility because then they don't have to store and fund a place to store a battery, but rather it's two in one. The battery is needed to power the bus, and it also becomes stationary storage for the utility. And so that school district is able to plug the bus in during the hot summer months and say, hey, Mr. Utility, would you like to purchase our power? And so sometimes that can even be a revenue generating opportunity for school districts as well. Something that no one has ever been able to say about the transportation department typically within a school district. So that's a nice win for school districts as well. Again, not something we've really seen in Virginia yet, but certainly other states are looking at those types of models as well. I'd say finally, the last benefit that I want to touch on, and again, I'm sure many of these are things that you guys have heard about, but one of the things that we have seen specifically as a benefit for us in Virginia is that many of those 132 Virginia school districts have been on the leading front in pioneering this technology, and that they have honestly been, again, huge supporters and people that really drove change within the industry. And so with them being early adopters, we have now proven out this technology for at least the last 4 years to say it does work, and it does come with some kinks. Sure, we're going to move on to some of those considerations in a minute, but that it does work, and that even with some of the kinks and little, bumps in the road, we track very closely the uptime of all of those 220 units in operation in the state, very, very closely, much more closely than even the diesel uptime of buses is tracked. And over the last 4 years, on average, we see about a 91% uptime with our electric school buses. That is very much on par with the diesel fleet. So it's very comparable. Sometimes it doesn't always seem that way, but the thing is that it's new technology, so it is high visibility. So sometimes it seems, and a lot of times it's portrayed as maybe not as increased uptime, but when you really look at the numbers, it's very comparable to the proven technology of diesel as well in terms of uptime. Now we'll move on to the key considerations. And I will say these key considerations are not meant to be like something that scares districts off from pursuing electrification, but we want to talk about them because, again, through our experience, we have learned if you spend time thinking about these things on the front end, it will save you down the road, and it will lead to a much more successful deployment. And again, I point back to the slide that says it works for about 50% or more of the routes in Virginia, but there may be some routes it doesn't work for. And so this is why it's important that we go through some of these key considerations when you're wanting to adopt electric school buses to say, how can I make this as successful as possible for our district? So in our experience with them, these are some of the top ones that we've come across that, are things that, when a school district thinks about them ahead of time, it really leads to a better experience down the road. So the first key considerations are really about range and battery life. So range considerations. When we looked at Julie several slides ago, like I said, about 150-mile operating range. That is the same as when you get a car from the dealership and it has that sticker on the window that says, it gets 30 miles to the gallon. That's the estimate. It is, this is what we target. This is about what it's going to be. It's not always going to be this. That's the same as the range on an electric vehicle. It is in optimal situations when you are, driving as you should or whatever it is, this is the range you will achieve. It's not the range you're going to achieve all the time. So when we look at range on Julie, 150 miles, again, a lot of the ones out in the field are actually closer to about 140-mile operating range. The 150 is our newest deployment of electric school buses. We like to be conservative and tell school districts, look, the range is going to be this on an optimal operation, 140, 150, whatever it is. But for you to have the best experience, be conservative. You have about 140, but don't try to push it to 140. You don't want to drive your car to empty. You don't want to drive your electric school bus to zero either. So think of it in terms of, I want to use 80 to 100 of those miles, and then I want to be safe and I want to charge it back up. It's not to say it can't do 140. I have personally drove one myself and gotten better than the operating miles that is posted on the website, but that's not going to be the case all the time. So what we like to do is to tell school districts to be conservative with their range. Don't try to push it to its top limit. This is for a couple of reasons. One, it's driver confidence. If anybody, has driven a diesel bus, you fill it up, you probably need to fill it up maybe once a week. And it's slowly going down. With an electric bus, I've driven our electric van, I've driven our electric school bus, it goes down a lot faster. And as a new driver who has not perhaps had experience with electric vehicles, that can be very intimidating. And so for sheer confidence with our drivers and just peace of mind, this is another reason we tell school districts, be more conservative with your range. Try not to push it past 100. Not that it can't go 100, But for the sake and the sanity of the driver and you as a transportation director trying this new technology, at least when you're starting off, let's try for 100. The next thing is battery longevity. So this is a question we get asked all the time. We were asked this question back in 2019. I'm still asked this question today. The average lifespan of a school bus in Virginia is about 15 years. That's the recommended life cycle of a bus. And we are asked all the time, will an electric school bus last 15 years? We can say from our manufacturer's modeling, our battery manufacturer's modeling, we feel like it will. But that's the same as a car too, where you say one car might last 8 years, one might last this many miles. It's going to be different based on the application and the operation every time. It's not a one size fits all. But we do have to be aware and think about the battery longevity and say, you know, if I am pushing the limit on this bus every single time, what do I think the life of this bus is going to be? Do I want to consider an extended warranty? Many of the school districts in our or in Dominion's program actually have extended warranties for their batteries, just for, again, it's really honestly about peace of mind. I foresee that down the road, those extended battery warranties are not as popular because people will gain confidence in it as things go along. But for right now, with new technology, it helps people feel more at ease and it gives them that assurance that it will last those years. Each of our electric school buses, the standard warranty is already 8 years. So it does come with a very generous warranty on there as well, more than a diesel bus does. So that's a positive. A diesel bus typically is more like 3 to 5, depending on the components, whereas an electric school bus, that battery is got a minimum warranty of 8 years. Next thing, I've touched on this a little bit, but bus and infrastructure costs. So lots of hidden costs with infrastructure, from utility upgrades, construction, things that people don't think about. One thing to know about the infrastructure costs is a lot of these funding programs don't always cover those costs. It's really, with the reduced funding, we are seeing more and more that school districts are having to come out of pocket. Cue why it's really important to have utility relationships and start trying to ask your utility now. Maybe you're not buying an electric bus now, but if you think you might be interested in it, go ahead and put a bug in your utility's ear and say, we're thinking about this. Do a site evaluation. Is our site, do we have capacity for these chargers? Are we going to need to do upgrades? How much are they going to cost? So that you can go ahead and get that ball rolling. This is honestly the Achilles heel of most school bus deployments, charging infrastructure and chargers in general. Upfront cost, another thing to think about. The cost of an electric school bus is going to be more than that of a diesel bus. It's going to be about 2.5 times more. So more than likely, school districts, we've had one school district buy a electric school bus outright without any grant funding. But for most school districts, that's just not feasible. And so you do need to think about, where am I going to get this supplemental funding from to make this possible? Next thing is technology and maintenance. So I mentioned about our uptime being 91% on these buses that we have in the field to date. That is a hard fought 91% too, because the thing is these are newer technology. A lot of times what we see with these early deployments across all manufacturers is that we are now taking things that have been worked on in a lab, and now we're putting them actually in the field, and we are having technicians and dealerships have to interact with problems for the very first time. A lot of times when something on an electric school bus or a charger goes wrong, it's the first time somebody's seen it in the field. And so there is a knowledge base that has to be built and learned within OEMs, within dealerships, to be able to understand these problems and diagnose them. So sometimes that has led to longer than usual downtimes on buses, to where it takes a little longer to troubleshoot them. It takes a little longer to get the parts because the parts aren't as readily available on them. So again, that's why I say that 91% is hard fought, and why we are very glad to have 4 different locations with 180 employees that we can really like buckle down and work our hardest to keep that uptime up. But that is something with this new technology that service personnel and operations people really have to know going into it. Is nobody is going to stand here and say that there won't be any issues. There will be, and you have to have a partner that is willing to do their very best to ease that trouble for you and to get the bus up and running as quick as possible. But a lot of times it is new things that people are seeing in the field, so it takes a little longer to diagnose them. There's also the service technician adaptation, where a lot of these school districts, they have diesel technicians, which is great. They have a great base knowledge to learn on, but it's different technology. So there's some training that has to happen that our team does provide to technicians. There's some mentoring, there's some shift in mindset. A lot of times we like to say that technicians kind of go from being a gearhead to a gamer, to just kind of understand, like, these mechanical parts, or now we have some more electronic parts and how that works, and kind of, again, really to make for more effective and thorough diagnostics so that we can start lessening the downtime when we have these issues. So that's something that comes as the market matures, and as, again, the mind shift shifts a little bit, and we're intentional in training that kind of mindset. Next one, again, really important. This is a lesson learned after a few different deployments. We have deployed electric school buses all over the state, to different operations, to different localities, some of which all stakeholders were very excited to have them. Then we've deployed them to some localities where some stakeholders were excited to have them and some were not so excited to have them. Just like anything else, you have some people that are super excited to get the iPhone, and then you have some people that are saying, I want the old one and I don't necessarily want to get something new. And so what we have learned is, when we deploy these electric school buses, stakeholder engagement and acceptance and confidence matters. Mindset matters. You need to be intentional in having tough conversations with community members, with administrators, with local government officials, with service team members, and making sure everybody feels comfortable. It's okay to be a little cautious and maybe even a little skeptical, but we have to intentionally engage with those individuals so that, a negative mindset does not overpower what the potential of the product can be. So very intentional in trying to get all stakeholders engaged. We often will do delivery events as well as several training events with different members, so that everybody can have a chance to interact with the bus, with the chargers, get acclimated to them, ask our team questions, learn some of these things that we've learned along the way, so that, again, we can really nurture a positive mindset going into the process. Next one, charging infrastructure. Again, I will say that this is the linchpin and it is the Achilles heel of electric school bus adoption. When we talk about vehicle electrification, that is new. Chargers are kind of even newer. What we see with charging infrastructure in general is charger dependency. Some of the chargers, they are new to the market. A lot of these companies are newer, so sometimes the reliability is not quite there yet. There's more downtime with a charger, and of course, if you have a charger go down, the bus and the charger go hand in hand. So sometimes it often puts a bus down unless you have some redundancy built into your charger. So essentially having more chargers than you do buses. Charger reliability, again, just the dependability of the charger and maintaining them up. Grid dependency, of course, if the power goes out, your charger is not going to work. Not something that happens very often, but still something just to think about. Maybe you get an extra snow day because the buses can't operate, but it's not really a snow day, These are, again, just the charging aspect of really saying a charger down means a bus down, is basically the situation that, we've seen some school districts get into when they don't have charger redundancy, or when they really are using all of their buses on their longer routes. I think what we've seen within the industry, and I think that this is improving, is that what we see with vehicle OEMs is that most school bus manufacturers have an established dealer network. So when something goes wrong, a fleet manager doesn't call their OEM and say, hey, something's wrong with my bus. They call their dealer and they say, hey, something's wrong with my bus. I need you to come help me work on it. When a charger goes down, there really is not a service network well established for that yet. We have a lot of charger OEMs, we don't have as much of an established service network for those. That is something that we see charger OEMs starting to be very intentional about now looking at doing. But it seems like in the past years, it's been more about getting the chargers out there, and we'll figure out servicing them later. So that can be especially difficult as you're trying to get service for your charger. If it's not working properly, there's just not as many people who know how to work on them. Another reason we need to engage with our students so that we can get them excited about careers such as that are going to be new, and we'll need people to fill. So driver logistics, one thing in particular that we've seen with driver logistics, especially in more rural school districts, is a lot of times with diesel buses, you have many drivers that actually take their buses home and they go straight from their house in the morning to their route. That's not really conducive for electric school buses. Not saying that something can't be done to help it, but essentially you're probably going to move from the model in most cases of saying you can't take the bus home anymore, but how can we make chargers work for that? So what we have seen in other school districts to kind of mitigate this issue is they will take their chargers and they will spread them out over the locality. So where most school districts typically have a centralized bus depot, we now see that they're kind of spreading out their chargers and they're putting chargers at each of their schools so that they're spread out across the county so that, you know, they don't have to come necessarily to the county central bus garage to get their bus, but rather can go to their nearest school, pick up their bus, and then do their route. So it's not quite as long of a commute to their bus, if you will. So again, those are just a few of our key learnings that we've had. There are many more things that could be said, and a lot further I could dive into those. That's just kind of the high level highlights for you. Essentially, I just kind of wrap it up by saying electric tool buses are not really just plug and play. They are something that you have to be very well planned about, very intentional about, and having the right partners from your utility to your charger OEM, your bus OEM, your dealer, whoever's doing your construction. You need the right partners to really get the support to make it a successful deployment. So that's really what we've learned. I hope that it's been helpful for you. I'm glad to take questions. Went a little longer than I had hoped, but hopefully it was informative for you. And I will throw my information up on the screen. I'm glad to dive into any of that more or talk about something totally different if you have interest in something electrification wise. And my contact information is there that you're welcome to reach out anytime.